Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's your favorite messy-haired Asian here. I really got to figure out something to do with my hairstyle. If you guys have any ideas for what I could do with this hair, please let me know in the comments. But otherwise, I just wanted to talk a bit today about cozy games, because I feel like cozy games is a genre that has, yes, gotten more popular in recent years, but I feel like is still severely underrated. You know, I'm talking games like Stardew Valley, Terraria, to a certain extent, depending on what you're doing in the game, Animal Crossing, etc. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of gameplay recorded for these games, so we're just gonna have to insert like random trailer footage here and there. I'm sorry, I gotta buy like a bigger hard drive so I can just store like terabytes worth of random gameplay footage, since I always talk about a myriad of games that I love, but I don't have a lot of footage of them. Let's not waste any time. Let's go ahead and talk about a few different types of cozy games. So we have the general type of cozy game that you usually think of when you think of a cozy game, right? This is a game like Story of Seasons, Harvest Moon, Animal Crossing, Stardew Valley, a game where you're starting a farm, you work on the farm, you possibly romance somebody along the way, you build up your town, you build up your house, and you go about it. And I love and adore games like this, right? Like, I've always loved Animal Crossing, and there's one aspect of Animal Crossing that nobody ever really talks about, but I'm going to talk about, because you guys know me, I always pick up on the littlest details, and it's the way that the game is designed, where every time you walk, it's like you're walking across a globe. Now, I know that that sounds really simple and maybe even stupid, but when you think about it through, you know, through the lens that I see it in anyway, it always made Animal Crossing feel so much bigger than it actually is, because you're going across this, you know, and the scene is ever changing. And for somebody like me, where escapism is so important to me, because if you don't know my lore, basically, I'll just kind of run through this quick. I struggle with a lot of mental disorders, but one of them is disassociation, which means that I don't ever really feel like real in real life, right? Like, I feel like I'm always living in a dream. So video games are a very important escape for me, and with the way that Animal Crossing is designed, it really helps me escape into that world, because it just really gives my brain something really stimulating to look at, because it's like ever changing, and you know, you're going by, you see your villagers in their houses, you see all like the farmland and the way that things get built up as you go, and then obviously you're able to go and like have conversations with the villagers. Also, I don't know who everybody's favorite Animal Crossing character is. For me personally, it's Tom Nook. I just, you know, for obvious reasons, I just feel like I resonate with him. I feel like Isabelle would probably be most people's favorite, but I don't know, I love Tom Nook. One thing I love about Animal Crossing and other games that aren't even necessarily cozy games, like Persona, for example, is the way that these types of games romanticize everyday tasks and make them actually fun. Like in Persona games, when you're doing laundry, or sitting at a cafe talking to your friends, or just walking around the town shopping, or in Animal Crossing when, you know, you're out fishing or farming or doing this, that, or the other. It really helps you appreciate those moments in the game, which in turn always helps me appreciate those moments just a bit more in real life as well, because, you know, it's very easy to get caught up in the mundane aspects of life and just how mundane everything can feel. But when you're playing a video game, whether or not it ends up translating to real life or not, you know, I feel like real life is just one of those things where it's kind of a constant roller coaster for everybody. Some days it's great, some days it's bad, some days it's outright terrible, and, you know, it just kind of ebbs and flows like that, and there's not really escaping that cycle. But at the very least, you know, video games are always just a really nice consistent escape, and, you know, just being able to do those things and appreciate those things, even if it is just in a video game setting, is really cool. And it's definitely quite the contrast, because for me, I play a myriad of video games. I don't consider myself to just be a shooter player or an open world player or a platformer player or anything. I play all the video games, right? I play Tetris, I play Mario, I play Animal Crossing, I play Call of Duty, I play Titanfall, I play GTA. You know, I play everything. There's something about cozy games too that help you escape in a completely different way, because there's some video games where you just completely escape, like in a game like Call of Duty, where it's just fast, frenetic action, you're diving around corners, and your brain is just locked in on this whole idea of you becoming like a super soldier, you know, doing all this crazy movement and whatnot. But then in a game like Animal Crossing, it's an escape in a different way, where you're not just completely, I mean, you are escaping into that world, but you're still at least somewhat present in the moment, if that makes sense, because what your brain isn't being like, you know, completely stimulated by all these numbers popping up on screen and all these bullets and noises flying past your head. You're still living in the moment, but you're still calm both in the game and in real life, if that makes sense. And that's, you know, something that's always been very important for me. Again, struggling with anxiety. I have really severe anxiety. It doesn't take much to set me off. Even going to the grocery store usually sends me in a bit of a panic, you know, if I'm being honest. Now, we've been talking about Animal Crossing for a minute, so let's go ahead and talk about one of my other favorite cozy games. This one I won't spend too much time on, but that being Minecraft. You know, this is a pretty obvious one. You know, it's as cozy as you want it to be. You can either go into creative mode and make it the most cozy experience possible and, you know, build stuff, and that's basically it, or you can go into survival mode and still have a cozy experience, but still kind of be on your toes, because you got to look out for the rogue creeper that's gonna, you know, inevitably gonna come up from behind and blow you up and blow your house up, and, you know, that's a whole thing to deal with. Or going mining, you know, but there's still a cozy vibe to Minecraft, even when you're deep down in those caves, even when you're fighting all those mobs, even when you're prepping to go fight the Ender Dragon and whatnot. Because, you know, you got that soundtrack going the whole time, and there's something about games like that where even if it's not inherently made to be cozy in the same way that a game like Animal Crossing or Story of Seasons or Stardew Valley is, it's still inherently cozy just because most of the time you're just spent doing, you know, basic tasks like I was talking about in Animal Crossing before, where you're going to be out farming, where you're going to be out fishing, or just building up your base, or prepping to go do something bigger, and then you have the soundtrack in the background the whole time. Like, we all know how amazing the Minecraft soundtrack is. Literally every time I play Minecraft, I end up tearing up at least a little bit just because the soundtrack is that beautiful and is obviously very nostalgic as well. Now, here's a bit of a curveball for you. One of my favorite cozy games, which isn't a cozy game, is Dark Souls. No, I know that may sound like I'm joking or like I'm being hyperbolic or sarcastic or something, but I'm serious. Dark Souls is genuinely a cozy game for me because if you're unfamiliar with Dark Souls, which I don't know how that would be possible, but you know, maybe for a bit younger you are, Dark Souls was basically the Elden Ring of the 2010s. You know, there was video game journalists that were really bad at video games that would call any game that was even slightly difficult the Dark Souls of 3D platformers, or the Dark Souls of first-person shooters, or whatever, which inherently Dark Souls really isn't that challenging. Like, are you gonna die a lot on your first playthrough? There's a chance, right? Like, especially while you're learning the game's mechanics, but realistically, the game is kind of easy once you really get the grasp of things, and once you learn to just be patient. Patience is the virtue there, and I guess that's part of why Dark Souls is a cozy game for me, because Elden Ring, I wouldn't necessarily call a cozy game. Dark Souls 2, I would call a cozy game, and Dark Souls 3 probably not. So really, Dark Souls 1 and 2 I would consider to be cozy games for me, and that's because they are slow, they are methodical, they are full of atmosphere, and don't get me wrong, the other Souls games are obviously full of atmosphere as well, but there's something about, especially like Dark Souls 1, right? Like, you go through the tutorial section, which even then, you know, that has a pretty chill vibe in itself up until you get to the Asylum Demon, and then you get to Firelink Shrine, and if you've heard the soundtrack before, if you spent any time in Firelink Shrine, you already know how freaking, cathartic it is to sit there. There's something about Firelink Shrine, the contrast between sitting there and going anywhere else in the world in Dark Souls. It's so cozy sitting there by the bonfire, hearing that soundtrack. It's so nice, it's so peaceful. And yet, if you even, you know, just go down the hill for a moment, that's when you see all the skeletons rolling up by the graveyard at the cemetery and everything like that. So, you know, it's really only as cozy as you allow it to be. But again, just due to that, like the contrast between Firelink Shrine and the rest of the world, and the slow, methodical combat in the game, it always felt more like a dance rather than like an action RPG to me. Like, obviously it's an action RPG, but it feels more like a dance game in a way. And I know that sounds stupid, but think about it. You take a move, the enemy takes their move. You can't make your move until the enemy has made their move, and they can't make their move if you've already made your move. You know, you can play it aggressively if you want. It's a bit ballsy, and you know, you gotta be ballsy if you're gonna do it, and there's a chance that you're gonna die, but I mean, you know, sometimes there's a payoff, and it's like the slow dance, especially in the boss fights, right? Like, I don't know, Gwyn swings, you parry him, and then, you know, that's basically the boss fight. But games like Dark Souls and the original Resident Evil 4, and really all of the classic Resident Evil games, I can make a whole video dedicated to the original Resident Evil trilogy. I love those games so much. I would say if I had to pick one that I played the most, or maybe like I'd say like is my favorite, I'd say Resident Evil 2, but that's really hard for me because I love all three of those games for different reasons. But, you know, RE3 is more action, RE1's more survival horror, and then like RE2 is more about like the I don't even know how to explain it. It's more about just like the combination of everything, has some more puzzles in it and everything like that. I love Resident Evil 2 so much. That soundtrack when you first step into the RPD, oh, it's so good. The next kind of cozy game I'd really like to talk about is Journey type games. So think like Journey, Sky, Omno, Abzu, A Memoir Blue. These are some of my favorite games. I'll go ahead and talk about the ones that I played the most, those being Omno and Abzu, and A Memoir Blue actually. A Memoir Blue has a bit more story in it, so we'll just focus more on like Omno and Abzu since those more closely stick to the original Journey type format. Omno is this game where you play as this character and you have like this stick or whatever, and basically you just kind of surf through the environment in Journey fashion. You're making your way. You know, I don't want to spoil anything about the story in any of the games that I'm talking about, and I know it's kind of hard to spoil actual story in a game like this, but there's still like just, you know, beautiful scenery to be seen along the way. Another game I would like to talk about is Entwined, which is also sort of, I guess you could call it a cozy game. It's not exactly like Journey, but I was just thinking of it as we were going here, so I'll talk about it now. It's this game where you play as this bird and this fish, and they're in love, but obviously they can never be together because they're a bird and a fish, and you go through this journey of you know, the bird and the fish together. You beat the game with within like an hour, maybe tops. But it's such a beautiful game between the soundtrack and the gameplay and the overall theming and story of this bird and this fish that are so in love yet can't be together due to the circumstances. And then, like I said, I won't spoil anything about, you know, where the game actually ends up going, but it's genuinely one of the most beautiful games I've ever played, and it had me in tears by the end of it. Entwined is one of those games that I point to whenever I'm making the argument that video games are an art form, because obviously video games are an art form. Video game is an art form combined of a bunch of different art forms. Music is an art form, which is very integral to video games. Actual art, like drawing stuff and like, you know, doing like computer designing and stuff like that, that's an art form. And again, all these things just make video games. But anyway, Entwined is one of those games where even though there's no dialogue in the game and it's not like a traditional story type game like Last of Us or, you know, anything else like that, it still tells like such a beautiful story, and it's one of the most moving games that I've ever played, even though it was only like an hour long. Similarly, Abzu is a very similar game, except this one takes place underwater, and you're basically just swimming through these environments, trying to make your way through the game, solving puzzles. It's not too long. Again, you can beat it within like an hour or two, but it's genuinely such a beautiful game. I love that game so much. The soundtrack is so good, and it's another one that it definitely goes in some places I wasn't expecting it to, but it was such an amazing experience from start to finish. Next up is a bit of a weird one. Let me go grab my Nintendo Switch. I don't really have it in me to like plug in my capture card and everything, so we're just gonna kind of show it to you on camera. Actually, while I'm thinking of it, there's another cozy game on my Switch that I don't have updated at the moment, I don't think, but it's called Palia or Palia. I actually was following that game before it released because I was really excited to play it whenever it did finally release. The unfortunate part is that it's an always online game, which kind of turned me off from it a little bit. If I'm gonna be honest, I really like playing, you know, off games that you can actually play offline. Letter A, it helps future-proof them, but also, I don't know, it's just one of those things where when it starts kind of getting like MMO-y, it's like I can still do that, but I like cozy games where I'm able to just kind of do my own thing in my own space away from online, you know what I mean? So basically it's this game where, and I've already put a lot of time into it. I don't know, like, if anybody has played this game before, you'll see where I'm at, but like, hold up. Okay, so basically, oh shoot, I gotta collect this pig. Anyway, you can see my character right here, right? I don't know how well you can see it. Can you see that okay? See, I'm like a stormtrooper. Basically, it's this game where you just like, oh shoot, I didn't, okay, oh, you can see where I'm at, I think. Yeah, so like I made a good bit of progress. Oh wait, is this just like, oh, change world, there it is. Yeah, so I already completed the one world and now I'm on this one, and if you know anything about this game, it takes a long time to get any of this stuff done. But anyway, oh no, my one person's talking about how his barn is full, but it's literally like a 1-2 button game. You just walk through and then, you know, you like farm, and that's basically it. It's really satisfying to play. I'm sorry, I'm looking at it in the camera, so it's really hard to play it this way. But yeah, you just like go around farming like this basically. You can hire farmers to help you get the farming done, and then you try to complete the island. You got to get like enough money to unlock it all, and then it lets you go to the next world. It's very satisfying to play. The sound effects are really nice, and the way that like the controller vibrates while you're playing, it's really nice too. It's definitely a brain-rotty type of game, if I'm going to be honest. Like, there's literally, it's such a simple concept, and there's not, how do I explain this? There's not really a goal here, man. You're just kind of infinitely farming, buying new land, running back and forth, hiring new farmers, trying to advance through the whole game. And that's basically all there is to it. Yet for me in that way, it's kind of like a guilty pleasure. You know what I mean? Where it's like, I'm okay with indulging in it from time to time. I try not to play it too much because I know there's like really... I know I'm not really achieving anything by playing this game. Like, you know, I'm okay just playing games for the sake of playing games, but this is one of those games where it was originally a mobile game, and just because of that, I'm kind of careful with how much I kind of just sit here and do nothing on this game. I can't be the only person that kind of has not necessarily a bias against mobile games, but kind of just feels some sort of way when they hear mobile game. Not because mobile gaming is inherently bad or anything, but just because we know how a lot of scummy the practices are and the way that video games are developed for mobile specifically. My only exception to that is anime gachas, because I mean, I love anime and I love gachas, so you know, I'm like a sucker for that kind of thing, and I actually feel like I'm achieving something by playing those games. Because for me, I don't need to be achieving something while playing a game, but I would also like to feel like I'm not wasting my time, and unfortunately I kind of feel like that whenever I play mobile games like this, or I just kind of feel like I'm wasting my time, just, you know, just whatever. But you know, it's still like a fun and cozy game, just one that I figured I'd show just for the sake of it, because it is like a guilty pleasure of mine. Who knows, maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe when you do unlock the final final island, maybe something happens and you get like a final credit sequence. If something like that happens and you actually beat the game, like I'll stick with it. And then if that happens, then I'm sorry. I take back everything I said. I was actually achieving something the whole time. It was just a very grindy process because that's also a part of it. It takes a really long time to get anything done when you really start getting in the groove of things to open up an entire island. Anyway, TLDW, I know we've just kind of been rambling for a little bit here, but my whole point with all this is I love cozy games. Cozy games are important, and even though they're getting more and more popular nowadays, I just feel like it's still a genre that more people should give a chance. You know, there's a good bit of people that just kind of stick to one game nowadays. They just play Roblox, they just play Fortnite, they just play COD, and you know, it's not like it used to be, because back in the day, you know, everybody, like growing up for me, you know, there was like, you know, the Super Nintendo and the PlayStation and the PlayStation 2, everybody was talking about Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, Super Mario World, Resident Evil, Crash Bandicoot, Spyro the Dragon, Grand Theft Auto 3, Ratchet and Clank, you know, like the list goes on and on. Like everybody was just playing all these different games, but nowadays we have these games that are basically just like metaverses within themselves. So that just leads to people trying less games overall, even just beyond cozy games. But yeah, cozy games is definitely one of those genres where I feel like, even though yes, it's been getting more popular lately, just deserves more love and attention, because it really is cathartic and it really is such a nice escape from everything. Because again, video games are just a nice escape in general, especially, you know, for me. Like the story I've told many times before, and the first time I played a video game was Donkey Kong Country when I was 3 years old on the Super Nintendo, and you know, I've always been a gamer for my entire life. I love video games. I love all different kinds of video games, and cozy games is just one of those where I don't get to talk about them too much on the channel, so I wanted to give them their much due love and respect. But anyway, as always, a massive shout out to the patrons and channel members to get all in the low ball tier, and an even bigger shout out to on the big ball tier, the last king, and Matty, and the biggest shout out to on the GT run. I'm Son Luciso. Thank you guys so much, guys. Little Legends, I love you. Good on you, Dodoki. Arigatou gozaimasu. Have an amazing day, stupid. I love you all. Peace.